The world of One Piece is one of the best written things I've ever come across. The sheer number of mysteries and unexplained events in this sea is fascinating, and honestly, kind of terrifying. Because we experience this world through the eyes of the Straw Hats, who are absurdly powerful monsters bursting with potential. It's easy to lose sight of how genuinely insane it would be to live in that world as just a normal, average person, like you or me. Picture some random fisherman heading out at 5 in the morning in his humble little boat to catch some fish, and in the middle of his day, he looks up at the sky and sees this. Colossal silhouettes looming on the horizon, and he has absolutely no idea what the hell they are. In the world of One Piece, there are islands floating in the sky that most of the population doesn't even know exist, because they stay hidden above the clouds. Those giant silhouettes appear on the horizon because sunlight hits the people living on those islands and casts these massive, warped shadows down onto the world below. And here's the worst part. Even though there's a real explanation for it, that fisherman is never going to find out what he saw. Nobody's ever going to believe his story either, because he's just an ordinary guy with nothing special about him, drowning in a world packed with mysteries that only a tiny handful of people actually understand. That's exactly why I think living in that world would be terrifying. You don't know anything, and the biggest fear a human being can have is the unknown. And if you're a little braver and decide to actually go explore that enormous world, my friend, you're in trouble. For starters, you're probably not some overpowered character with a cool devil fruit ability. You're just some scrappy, small-time pirate with a crew of a dozen nobodies. And there are countless insane things that can happen to you just by being out on the water. Lightning storms, blizzards in the middle of the ocean, colossal whirlpools, pirate ambushes. Your ship can literally fall out of the sky and crush you because it plummeted off some floating island above. And one of the most infamous seas in this world, one you'll have to cross if you want to be a pirate, is the Grand Line. The weather there is completely insane. The temperature can swing from scorching hot to freezing cold in the span of a minute. If your immune system isn't strong, you're done for. You might also accidentally wander into the Florian Triangle, a fog-choked stretch of sea, basically an aquatic Bermuda Triangle. In there, you might run into a massive, shadowy figure on the horizon that, to this day, nobody knows the truth about. It's one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in all of One Piece, so who knows what it could do to you. And on top of all that, falling into Thriller Bark. You might look at that thing and assume it's an island, but it's not, friends. Thriller Bark is an entire ship, a literal megastructure where pure terror reigns. There's a warlord of the sea living inside it who can literally steal your shadow and turn you into an undead zombie slave forever. Then there's also the Boyne Archipelago, which at first glance might look like a paradise island since it's overflowing with fruit, food, and meat. But in reality, friends, that's all a trap. There's so much food there specifically to fatten up every animal on the island so that the island itself can eat them. Why? Because that entire archipelago is actually one colossal living creature with a mouth in the middle that snaps shut and devours everyone and everything unlucky enough to be standing on it. Everything is unpredictable and unknown. Living in that world is like being a nomad thousands of years ago on our own planet, caught in a storm you can't explain, terrified because you think the world is ending. It's like being a sailor during the Age of Exploration, paralyzed with fear of running into one of those colossal sea creatures drawn on the old maps. The difference is, in One Piece, those colossal creatures actually exist, and that planet is way bigger than our own Earth. Genuinely, everything in One Piece is enormous. A random sea king, one of those colossal creatures roaming the ocean, can grow up to about 5 kilometers long. For comparison, the blue whale, the largest animal on our Earth, is only about 33 meters. You could be sailing along peacefully and suddenly run into something like this. Tsunesha. An elephant 35 kilometers tall, carrying an entire country on its back. Mount Everest, the tallest peak on our planet, is about 8 kilometers high. You'd need 4 Everests stacked on top of each other just to match the size of that creature. The islands in the world of One Piece are enormous too. Alabasta alone, the setting for one of the arcs, spans roughly 4,000 kilometers, nearly the size of Australia, an entire continent. There's actually a manga panel showing Alabasta from a wide, zoomed-out view. And if you do the math to figure out the actual scale of that single panel using the island as a reference point, you get something like 73,000 kilometers across. For context, Earth is roughly 40,000 kilometers around, meaning nearly 2 entire planet Earths could fit inside that one panel. The most dedicated fans have estimated that the entire planet in One Piece is at least 1,000,000 kilometers across, more than twice the size of Jupiter. I'm hopelessly in love with the world building in One Piece, and it's not just the wild, creative islands that get me. What really hooks me is that this world genuinely feels alive. The people in it feel like they actually exist within that context, and the characters' actions have real, lasting consequences across the entire world. It's incredibly satisfying watching a character do something in one corner of the map and seeing that ripple out and affect something completely different on the other side of the world. Take Luffy getting a new bounty. Characters who appeared ages ago actually react to it. It's so much fun. You've probably seen that Oda is a genius meme floating around, and it exists precisely because of stuff like this. There's a mountain of information dropped on you back in episode 300 that this sneaky author doesn't tie together and explain until episode 1000. I'll never forget watching the Thriller Bark arc, which happens around episode 300, where a character mentions being defeated in the New World, an area we wouldn't actually get to see in the anime for a long time yet, by a character named Kaido, who doesn't actually show up himself until episode 900. Kaido turns out to be one of the most important characters in the entire story, so it makes total sense he'd be mentioned that far in advance, long before we ever meet him. Same thing happens in Little Garden, back in episode 70, where we meet two giants who mention an entire island full of people their size, called Elbaf. It wasn't until 2025, in chapter 1126 of the manga, 26 years after that island was first mentioned, that the characters finally arrived there, finally reaching Elbaf, and those are just two examples. There are hundreds of foreshadowed details scattered throughout the entire story. Every time I notice one, my only reaction is to stare at my screen and go, "Oda, you absolute madman." There are also several mysteries introduced early on that still don't have an explanation to this day, like that giant shadow that appears in the Florian Triangle, or the Tequila Wolf Bridge, a massive structure that's been under construction for centuries with no one knowing why. Out of all these mysteries, my favorite is the Void Century, an entire 100 years of the world's history that's been completely erased. Nobody knows what happened during that period, and every record of it was destroyed. The only surviving information comes from these giant stone tablets called poneglyphs, inscribed in an ancient language almost nobody can read. And even that is a mystery in itself. Who carved these stones and scattered them across the world? Nobody knows. Even when the explanations finally do come, they're so clever, so creative. Just take those floating islands I mentioned earlier. It took several episodes of us being completely mystified before we even learned those islands existed, let alone that the giant silhouettes were shadows cast by their inhabitants. And the way they actually function is brilliant. The only way to reach one is through a specific natural phenomenon called a knock-up stream, a massive high-pressure jet of water that launches anything above it straight into the sky. Because the islands sit above the clouds, they're constantly drifting, so if you climb up onto one, by the time you come back down, you could end up somewhere completely different in the world. There are also two types of clouds up there: island clouds and sea clouds. Island clouds act like solid ground, just softer. Sea clouds behave almost exactly like the ocean, like water, just a bit denser. You can actually swim through it, and if you dive down deep enough, eventually you'll pass straight through it and fall back down to the world below. All of that is fascinating to me. These are exactly the kinds of questions I'd genuinely have if I found out Sky Islands were real. Oda writes like a kid playing pretend on an imaginary planet that, to him, feels almost real. And I hope I managed to get across at least a little bit of why I'm so in love with this world.